You know, breathing is a really popular pastime. I mean, it seems like everybody's doing it these days. But sometimes, for some people, it can be really hard to breathe. Let's talk a little bit about asthma, and let's talk about some of the herbs that can make a huge difference in those cases. I'm Dr. Patrick Jones from the Homegrown Herbalist School of Botanical Medicine, and I want to talk a little bit about asthma. So asthma is a condition that, millions of people in this world have it. And sometimes it's just the mild, aggravating, irritating, kind of harder to breathe than it ought to be. Sometimes it's life-threatening. People can die from asthma attacks. The pharmaceutical industry has some great resources to resolve that. They've got, inhalers and injections and pills and things that can be beneficial in opening up the airways and decreasing inflammation. And those can be very effective. And for some situations, they're absolutely critical. But those pharmaceuticals also have some side effects, some really negative side effects. And I'm not going to get into all that and bash the drugs. Drugs have a place and can be valuable tools. But long-term use of drugs for conditions like asthma can lead to some side effects that can be problematic. There can be some dependency that develops on the inhalers and on the pharmaceuticals, the corticosteroids that they use to decrease the inflammation, and the histamine levels can also have some long-term very negative effects. And again, I'm not going to get into all that. That'll be another 2-hour video. But the good news is that there are also some plants that can help with asthma. So let's talk a little bit about asthma, how it works, what's really happening, and then we can talk about what we're going to do about it. Okay, so first of all, let me give you a little anatomy, all right? So the respiratory system consists of the windpipe, or the trachea, right, up here, under your beard, right? So you can see that easier on some people than others. And then that branches into the bronchi, 2 big tubes, and then those bronchi branch into bronchioles, which get smaller and smaller, right? Sort of like branches on a tree. And they're tubular structures that the air flows through in the lungs, okay? Now, those bronchi and bronchioles, and the windpipe too, are surrounded by smooth muscle, all right? So they've got muscles, bands of muscles around them. And that's a good thing. The muscles have some very good benefits. They can relax and open up the airways, and they can contract, right? And make the airways a little more narrow. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, you might want your airways bigger if your oxygen needs were higher, right? If you're running away from a bear, things open up and you can breathe at a higher volume and more rapidly. Also, if it's really, really hot, your airways might open up a little bit so you can get air in and out and cool yourself off a little better, right? Dogs are very good at that, panting, right? But it happens in humans too. So what about contraction? Why would we want to narrow the airways? Well, what if the opposite happens? What if it's really, really cold? Oh, well, now we want to keep the air moving a little slower so it can warm up a little better and not freeze our lungs, right? So it might contract a little bit for cold air. It also contracts those muscles if there's an irritant, if there's a lot of air pollution or allergens or whatever, anything traumatic, smoke, the lungs are going to say, I don't want that in there, and they're going to contract those bronchi and bronchioles, okay? So those are natural functions. Those are natural events and beneficial events. Well, in an asthma attack, you also get that contraction. See, asthma is almost always initiated by irritants to the lungs. Not always, but almost always. That's always one of the players, okay? So, smoke, pollen, anything the person's allergic to, really cold air, right? Or stress, and there's other elements that can contribute to an asthma attack. But usually it's something irritating to the lungs. And so the lungs respond, and they respond in 3 ways, all of which are kind of bad, right? First of all, they say, oh, we don't like that. We're going to contract the muscles and make the airways narrower so that nasty stuff doesn't come in, right? That pollen or that smoke or whatever it is, that cold air, right? We're going to contract. And the contracture is excessive in an asthma case, okay? The second thing that happens is that the mucous membranes lining those bronchi get inflamed and irritated because it's an allergy or smoke or something irritating and inflammatory, okay? And so we've contracted the muscles, and that makes the pipe narrower. And now we're going to inflame the lining of that tube, and that's going to make the pipe narrower. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the lungs produce some extra mucus to protect them from that irritant, from the smoke or the pollen or the smog or whatever the heck it was that bothered them, okay? And so we're contracting and making it smaller, we're inflaming and making it smaller, and then we fill it up with mucus. Well, now you can't breathe, all right? Now you're in trouble. That's an asthma attack, okay? And so, what are we going to do about that from an herbal standpoint? Well, the great news is that there are some fantastic plants for all three of those conditions, okay? So let's talk about it. First of all, let's relax the muscles. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that with some antispasmodic herbs. That's what they call them. They're herbs that reduce muscle spasms. They relax muscles, okay? So we're going to open up those airways by relaxing the muscles so they're not squishing them shut anymore. So what are the plants that are good? Well, one of my favorites is lobelia inflata. Great antispasmodic herb. Cramp bark is another one. Viburnum opulus, another great antispasmodic, relaxes the muscles. Gumweed is good. Grindelia squarosa. All three of those, any of those three, can help relax those muscles and open things up. All right? So that's step number one. But let's approach this from some other angles. Let's do something about that inflammation too, can we? Sure, we can. We've got some great anti-inflammatory herbs. So the herbs that I love for this, for asthma, and for any inflammation or any allergy really, are Brigham tea, Ephedra viridis, or Ephedra nevadensis, there's several species, and stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, right? Stinging nettle leaf, that's the part you want. Either or both of those herbs has a good antihistamine effect, okay? So histamines are the chemicals that your immune system releases when it's irritated by something it's allergic to, okay? So the pollen comes in, or the smoke comes in, or whatever you're allergic to, your perfume or whatever it is, comes in, your body gets irritated about it and produces histamines to help try and get rid of it, okay? And so you start sneezing and wheezing and inflammation happens, trying to drive all those things out. And when you get inflammation in the bronchi, like I said, you're thickening the walls and you're decreasing airflow. So antihistamine herbs like Brigham tea and nettles can be really effective. They decrease the production of histamine, so they tell the body, quit making that stuff, it's awful, right? Number one. Number two, they interfere with histamine binding with the receptors on the cells that let it do its job, right? So no, don't talk to these guys, nothing to see here, right? Number two. And number three, they accelerate elimination of histamines. They do all kinds of things. They're complicated, amazing resources that do 3 or 4 things each to lower histamine levels, okay? Okay, so we took an antispasmodic to relax the muscles. We took some Brigham tea or some nettles for the antihistamine effects. Now let's look at the last thing, which is how can we get those goobers out? How can we move some of that mucus, all right? Well, we're going to use expectorant herbs. So expectorant herbs help get mucus out of the lungs. And they do that either by making the mucus thinner so it's easier to move out, or by accelerating the movement of the little cilia, which are the little hairs that move things out of the lungs, or both. Some of them do both. But let's talk about some of those plants. A really great one is elecampane, which is Inula helenium. The root of that plant's a really good expectorant. Gumweed is a good expectorant. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't we just talk about gumweed? Yeah, we did. It's also a good muscle relaxant. So you're getting 2 for 1. Lobelia is a pretty good expectorant. So there's 2 for 1 again. Antispasmodic and expectorant. Mullein is also a great plant for getting mucus out. It's a good expectorant. But it's also good for opening up the airways. And it doesn't do it by relaxing the muscles directly like the antispasmodics do. Mullein is a nervine, so it is telling the nerves to relax. So if you tell the nerves to have a nap, guess what? The muscles have a nap because the nerves quit telling them to do what to do. Okay? And so mullein's effect on opening the airways is the effect is the same. The mechanism's a little different. But again, that's another herb where you're getting 2 for 1. You're getting muscle relaxation and you're getting a good expectorant. And so with those 3 elements, antispasmodics to relax the muscles, anti-inflammatories to decrease histamine levels and decrease the inflammation of the lining of the bronchi, and good expectorants to get the mucus out, now you have a game-changing solution for an asthma attack. All right. And I've seen over the years in my naturopathy practice lots and lots of asthma cases. And I have a lot of people that don't need meds anymore. They're just using herbs to manage their asthma. Okay. I've used it in the veterinary practice for years and years as well. Those same kinds of approaches. Cats get asthma. I don't see it in dogs really, but cats get asthma. And I use the same formula in cats that I use in people. And have great results. I don't have to have those cats on prednisone. I don't have to have those cats on any medications at all. If they're starting to have a little trouble, mom gives them a little tincture and they're all squared away. Okay. I don't remember the last time I prescribed a pharmaceutical for a cat with asthma. I mean, it's been years and years and years, ever since I started using the herbs, because I have 0 side effects and just as good of an outcome. So anyway, these herbs can be very effective in emergency cases. They can be very effective in low-grade cases, very effective as preventive and management things. Some people just take them twice a day when they're, like during allergy season, when they're more prone to asthma attacks. Let me mention one other thing. While we're talking about asthma and not breathing in emergencies, I just started another course, another school. A colleague of mine, Dr. Jed Adamson, and I have developed this course called Assessment and Natural Interventions for Emergencies. And it's basically a course teaching the information and the tools that a person needs to make a difference between the time they call 911 and the time the ambulance comes, or doesn't come, right? There's some life-saving, game-changing things that have to happen in those first few minutes of an emergency. And if they don't happen before the ambulance gets there, you're going to need a hearse, not an ambulance, okay? We're talking about respiratory emergencies like asthma. We're talking about shock, how to assess it, how to manage it, all the different kinds of shock. We're talking about bleeding, Anyway, it's a really great course. Dr. Adamson's a naturopath also, but he also spent over 20 years sitting in the back of an ambulance saving people's lives all day. He was the director of emergency medical services for Jerome County, Idaho for a lot of years. I was a veterinarian for over 30 years, and so I saw emergencies all day, every day too. So we have a lot of experience with what has to happen. And frankly, oftentimes, natural interventions are very beneficial. But we're also going to teach you, the medical first aid techniques that you need to have to solve those problems too. Anyway, go have a look at that. You can see it. We'll put a link down in the description. But anyway, what were we talking about? Asthma, yes. Asthma is bad for you. Anyway, those are the plants that can be really fantastic for helping asthma cases. If you know somebody that's having struggles with that, I hope you'll share this with them. There's a little share button down there somewhere. Click on that. If you enjoyed the video, click the like. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, we'd love to have you on board. That helps us a lot if you do those things. Also, if you've learned something cool about how to manage asthma with natural interventions, put in the comments. We'd love to see that. I'm Dr. Patrick Jones from the Homegrown Herbalist School of Botanical Medicine. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.